Right now, while you're wrapped in blankets complaining about your heating bill, there's a place on Earth where winter means negative 60 degrees, where your breath doesn't just fog, it turns into ice crystals that fall to the ground with a tinkling sound the locals call the whisper of stars, where exposed skin freezes in 3 minutes, where even vodka turns to slush. Welcome to 13th century Yakutia, the coldest place humans have ever called home. Oh, and if you're watching this from literally anywhere warmer than negative 60 degrees, so basically anywhere maybe, hit that subscribe button before your fingers freeze to your phone. Just kidding. Your fingers are fine. The people we're about to meet, their fingers were in actual danger every single day. Drop a comment and tell me the coldest temperature you've ever experienced. I guarantee it wasn't cold enough to make your spit bounce. You are Zulus, 20 winters old. Your great-grandfather fled here with nothing but horses, cattle, and a promise from the elders that somewhere in this frozen forest there was grass. Actual grass. In a place where trees explode from cold and rivers freeze solid enough to support entire armies. It's the dead of winter, 1323, in what future people will call Yakutia. You wake before dawn not, that dawn means much when the sun barely crawls above the horizon for 2 hours. Your first sensation isn't cold, it's smoke. Thick, acrid smoke from the dried cow dung mixed with clay that insulates your balagan. Miss one feeding of the sacred hearth fire, let those embers die, and your family becomes a cautionary tale told in other balagans. Your grandmother is already awake, muttering prayers to the fire spirit while feeding it precious wood. She's lived through 47 winters. In your world, that makes her practically immortal. She remembers the journey north, when your people were still learning which berries killed you instantly versus which ones just made you wish they had. Here's what your 13th century morning routine doesn't include. Coffee doesn't exist here. Hot showers, the concept would confuse you, or checking what temperature it is outside. You already know it's death temperature. Here's what it does include. Chipping ice off the inside walls of your home, checking if the ice window needs replacing again, and putting on 7 layers of fur, so expertly sewn that not a single breath of wind can find your skin. Your boots, made from reindeer leg skin, the only part thick enough to keep your toes from turning black and falling off. That's not hyperbole, that's Tuesday. But here's the thing that would shock your soft, central heated descendants. You're not miserable. You're not even particularly uncomfortable. Because you, Zulus of the Saga people, descendant of horse warriors, who once rode the warm steppes of Lake Baikal, have learned something remarkable. You've learned to make negative 60 degrees home. Your people didn't just survive in the coldest place on Earth. You brought cattle here. Cattle. Animals that should freeze solid in minutes. You brought horses that learned to hibernate standing up. You created a civilization where none should exist. Invented technologies that wouldn't be discovered by Europeans for another 500 years. And you did it all without a single moment of Instagram documentation. No TikTok tutorials on how to not die when trees explode from cold. No YouTube videos on building my dream balagan. No life coaches telling you to embrace the suck. Just you, the cold, and the kind of stubborn ingenuity that makes human beings the most impossibly adaptable creatures on this frozen planet. Ready to see how your ancestors made hell freeze over and then moved in? Let's find out. The first rule of waking up in 13th century Yakutia? Don't move. Not yet. Not until you've assessed whether your extremities are still attached and functioning. Zulus learned this the hard way, when he was 7 and jumped out of bed too quickly. The shock of going from barely warm to death cold made him pass out. His father found him blue-lipped and barely breathing. That's your first lesson in extreme cold survival. Your body is constantly negotiating with death, and sudden movements break the treaty. It's still pitch black at 7 in the morning. Will be for hours. The darkness in winter Yakutia isn't like your darkness. It's not the absence of light, it's the presence of something else. Something thick and heavy that presses against the ice windows like a living thing. The Russians who arrive 3 centuries later will call it the dark time, and half of them will go insane before spring. The Yakut just call it morning. Sulus's eyes opened to the sound of his grandmother's morning prayers. She's been awake for an hour already, tending the fire with the devotion of a priestess, which technically she is. The hearth spirit, the most powerful force in any Yakut home, demands constant attention. Let it die, and it takes the family with it, not metaphorically, literally. The walls will grow ice crystals within an hour. The temperature inside will plummet to match the outside, and -60 doesn't negotiate. Here's what you need to understand about a traditional balagan. It's not a house. It's a machine for not dying. Every element has been refined over centuries of trial and error, where error meant finding frozen corpses come spring. The walls? Thick larch logs, chosen specifically because larch contains natural antifreeze compounds. The logs are chinked with moss, then covered with a mixture of clay and cow dung that's been fermented just right. Too fresh and it won't insulate. Too old and it crumbles. The sweet spot is about 3 weeks of fermentation, when it develops properties that would make modern material scientists weep with envy. The roof slopes at exactly the right angle to shed snow while trapping warm air. Too steep and you lose heat. Too shallow and the weight of snow collapses everything. The entire structure is then buried under earth and more dung-clay mixture, creating what's essentially a man-made hill with a door. From the outside, in winter, you might walk right over a balagan and never know 30 people are living beneath your feet. Inside, the layout follows rules older than memory. The sacred northeast corner belongs to the hearth. The southwest corner, farthest from the fire, stores ice and frozen goods. Men sleep on the north side, women on the south, children and elderly closest to the fire. These aren't arbitrary arrangements. They're survival mathematics, calculated in blood over generations. Sulus rolls out of his sleeping Furarctic fox lined with rabbit, if you're curiosend. Immediately his breath becomes visible, not the gentle puff of vapour you get on a cold day. This is thick, white, and falls. Your breath literally falls because the moisture freezes instantly into ice crystals. The Yakut call it the breath of spirits, and children learn early not to breathe directly on each other in winter. Ice crystals in the lungs are no joke. His first task is checking the ice window. Yes, ice. Glass would shatter in these temperatures, and besides, where would you get glass in 13th century Siberia? The ice windows are cut from river ice in early winter, shaped with metal tools, and fitted into frames. They last about 2 weeks before the constant temperature differential makes them opaque, then they're replaced. Sulus runs his hand over the surface, still clear enough. Maybe 3 more days before it needs changing. Next, clothing. And this is where you die, probably, because you think getting dressed means putting on clothes. Sulus knows getting dressed means performing a ritual that borders on sacred. Each layer has a purpose, an order, a method. First, the ikchi undergarments made from the belly skin of deer, where the hide is thinnest and softest. These have been worn for a week already. Yes, a week. You don't change clothes daily when changing clothes might kill you. The Ichi are impregnated with seal oil, making them water resistant and insulating. They smell like rancid fish. Sulus doesn't notice anymore. Over that, pants made from dog fur. Not wolf, not fox dog. Specifically, dogs that have been bred for undercoat density. The fur faces inward, creating air pockets. The pants are held up not with a belt, but with straps that go over the shoulders. A belt would constrict blood flow. Constricted blood flow means frostbite. Frostbite means amputation with a very sharp knife and no anesthesia. The upper body gets layers of rabbit, marmot, and finally caribou. Each layer slightly larger than the last, creating insulation through air gaps. The outermost layer of sanyakis, a work of art. Made from white reindeer belly fur, it reaches past the knees and includes a hood lined with wolverine. Why wolverine? Because ice doesn't stick to wolverine fur. You can breathe through a wolverine fur ruff all day and it won't frost up. The boots deserve their own song, which they have actually, several. The kerishen are knee-high constructions of reindeer leg skin with the fur inside stuffed with dried grass that's been beaten soft. The soles are bearded self, only thing that grips ice properly. Between the inner and outer boot is a layer of swan down. The whole thing is sewn with sinew, using stitches so fine they're waterproof. Your North Face boots just made your feet sweat, which made them wet, which made them freeze, which made them dead. Congratulations. But Sulus isn't done. Over everything goes the Doha massive overcoat of bear or wolverine fur that weighs about 40 pounds. It has no buttons, no zippers, just overlapping flaps held closed by your movements. Stand still too long and it opens slightly, ventilating excess heat. Move and it seals tight. It's engineering through 10,000 years of evolution. Finally, dressed a process that took 20 minutes and would have killed you 3 times, Sulus is ready to face the day. But first, breakfast. And this is where your modern sensibilities would really rebel. The morning meal in a Yakut household isn't about pleasure, it's about calories and survival. Sulus reaches for a chunk of Khoton fermented fish that's been buried in the ground since summer. It smells like death and tastes worse. But it's loaded with vitamins that prevent scurvy, proteins that maintain muscle mass, and fats that burn slow and hot in your belly. He cuts it with his personal knife. Every Yakut carries their own knife, from age 5 into paper-thin slices. The technique matters. Too thick, and it won't thaw in your mouth. Too thin, and it falls apart. The knife itself is a marvel. Forged from bog iron using techniques the Yakut brought from the south, it holds an edge in temperatures that would make most metal brittle as glass. Next, a bowl of tar-melted snow mixed with berries, preserved in seal oil and crushed larch needles. The larch provides vitamin C, the berries provide sugars. The seal oil provides enough calories to fuel a furnace, which is what your body needs to be in -60. His grandmother passes him a leather pouch. Inside, Koymok dried mare's milk curds that taste like concentrated sour cream mixed with chalk, pure protein and calcium. Horses that can survive here produce milk with 3 times the fat content of normal horses. Everything about survival here is concentrated, intensified, pushed to extremes. The old woman speaks while they eat, her voice barely above a whisper. Loud sounds in extreme cold carry weird. They bounce off ice crystals in the air, creating echoes where there should be none. She's telling him about the coming day's work. The cattle need checking. One of the pregnant cows is close to calving. In -60, Let that sink in. The spirits showed me in dreams, she says, using the old words that come from when their people lived in a place where grass grew, without human intervention. Today brings danger from the northwest. Sulu's nods. His grandmother's weather predictions are better than any modern meteorology. She reads signs invisible to untrained eyes. The way ice forms on the inside walls, the colour of the smoke, the behaviour of the cattle in their underground barn. She's been right about every major storm for 40 years. He finishes his meal, every scrap consumed. Nothing is wasted here, ever. The fish bones will be ground into powder and fed to the dogs. The seal oil container will be scraped clean and the residue rubbed into leather. Even the wooden bowl will be wiped with a piece of fur that will later kindle fire. Time to venture outside. This is the moment of truth. The transition from inside to outside in extreme cold is like diving into water if water could kill you in minutes. Sulu's pauses at the door, a massive construction of larchwood 4 inches thick, covered in leather and fur. The door frame is built with a high threshold and low header, forcing you to bend as you exit. This isn't about humility, it's about minimizing heat loss. He takes 3 deep breaths of the relatively warm inside air, hyperventilating slightly to oversaturate his blood with oxygen, because once he's outside, breathing becomes complicated. The door opens, and the cold hits like a physical thing, like being punched by winter itself. The first breath burns, the second makes your lungs seize. By the third, if you know what you're doing, you've learned to breathe through your nose, letting your nasal passages warm the air slightly before it hits your lungs. The world outside is blue, not metaphorically, actually blue. In extreme cold, light behaves differently. The sun, still below the horizon, throws blue light across ice crystals suspended in the air. Everything, the snow, the trees, even the smoke from other Balagansis, tinted with this ethereal blue glow. Sulu's doesn't pause to admire it. Beauty kills here. He moves with purpose toward the Kotonthe cattle barn, but barn is the wrong word. This is a fortress against cold, built half underground, with walls thicker than the house. The entrance is a tunnel that slopes down, then up, creating an air trap. Cold air sinks, warm air rises. Physics as architecture. Inside, 23 cattle stand in darkness, so complete it has weight. The smell hits like a wool manure, fermented hay, and the sweet scent of cattle breath. To you, it would be overwhelming. To Sulu's, it smells like wealth, like survival, like life itself. The cattle are Yakutian breed, though that name won't exist for centuries. They're half the size of European cattle, with thick, dense coats and the ability to slow their metabolism when needed. They can survive on hay, so poor it's basically straw. They can maintain body temperature in conditions that would kill a normal cow in hours. But they need help. Constant, careful help. Sulus checks each animal, running his hands along their sides, checking for signs of stress. One cow stands apart, her sides distended with pregnancy. Her breath comes in small puffs, and she shifts constantly. His grandmother was right. Today's the day. Calving in -60 is gambling with death. The calf needs to drop, get cleaned, and start nursing within minutes or it freezes. The afterbirth needs to be removed immediately or it freezes to the mother. The calf needs to learn to stand on legs that want to stick to the frozen ground. Sulus begins preparations with the methodical movements of someone who's assisted dozens of births. Straw is piled thick in the birthing corner. A leather sling hangs ready in case the calf needs to be suspended to prevent it from freezing to the ground. warm waterer, precious resource that requires melting ice over dung fire stands, ready in leather buckets. The cow bellows, a sound muffled by the thick walls. Outside, the temperature continues to drop. The blue dawn light grows marginally brighter. Somewhere in the forest, a tree explodes from the cold with a sound like a gunshot. Just another morning in the coldest place on earth. And Sulu's hasn't even started the hard work yet. Let's talk about food when the concept of fresh doesn't exist, when cooking might actually make things worse. When your entire culinary tradition revolves around the principle that if it's not frozen, fermented, or dried, it's probably going to kill you. The Yakut relationship with food in the 14th century isn't about enjoyment, it's about mathematics. A human body in -60 burns roughly 5,000 calories a day just maintaining core temperature. That's double what you need in temperate climates. Every meal is a calculation. Calories in versus heat lost. Get it wrong, and your body starts eating itself. By the time Sulu's returns from the cattle barn, the pregnant cow is progressing, but not ready. Yeth's cousin Tuyara has begun preparing the midday meal. She's 16, unmarried, and therefore responsible for food preparation in their extended family unit. In your world, that might seem unfair. In hers, it's power. The person who controls food distribution controls survival. The kitchen, if you can call it that, occupies the western wall of the balagan. There's no separate room, heat is too precious to divide. Instead, there's a raised platform where food preparation happens, close enough to the central fire for warmth, but far enough to avoid smoke. The cooking implements would make a modern chef weep. 3 iron pots, passed down through generations. A collection of wooden bowls and leather bags. Knives made from native iron, forged in summer when outdoor work is possible. Tuyara starts with kyosheh, which roughly translates to the thing that keeps you alive. It's a soup, but calling it soup is like calling the ocean wet. This is concentrated nutrition in liquid form, designed to deliver maximum calories with minimum effort. The base is bone broth, not the trendy stuff you buy at Whole Foods. This is bone scattle, horse, whatever died recently boiled for days until they literally dissolve. The marrow releases first, creating a fatty layer that would disgust you but delights anyone trying to survive winter. Then the bones themselves begin to break down, releasing calcium, phosphorus and collagen. By day 3, you can crush the bones between your fingers. To this base, Tuyara adds ingredients that would challenge your definition of edible. First, blood sausage made last month from a horse that broke its leg. The blood was mixed with milk, seal fat and wild onions, then frozen in cleaned intestines. It tastes like iron and survival. Next, chunks of eucalyptus dried so thoroughly it's basically fish leather. It needs to soak in the broth for an hour before it's chewable. Then comes the swarat, fermented fish heads that have been buried in the permafrost since summer. The fermentation process breaks down proteins into amino acids, creating natural MSG. It's umami bomb that predates the discovery of umami by 600 years. The smell could strip paint. The taste could wake the dead. The nutrition could keep you alive through another week of darkness. While the kyorchek simmers, Tuyara prepares the side dishes. And this is where Yakut cuisine gets really interesting. Because when you can't grow vegetables, can't import fruit, and can't even forage for 9 months of the year, you get creative. She pulls out a leather pouch of camusaclark needle tea. The needles were collected in early summer when vitamin C content peaks, dried in the brief sun, then stored in airtight containers made from fish bladders. Steeped in hot water, they release not just vitamin C, but compounds that prevent respiratory infections. It tastes like drinking a pine tree. After a few months, you stop noticing. Next, Khan blood pancakes. Fresh cattle blood mixed with milk, a precious pinch of salt traded from Chinese merchants 1,000 miles south, and flour. Except it's not wheat flour. Wheat doesn't grow here. This is flour made from the inner bark of larch trees, harvested in spring, dried, ground, and stored. It has almost no nutritional value, but it binds the blood and milk into something solid, something that feels like food instead of desperation. The pancakes cook on a flat stone placed near the fire, not on the fire that would burn them, near it, where the temperature is merely hot instead of destructive. Tuyara flips them with movements born of years of practice. Too early, and they fall apart. Too late, and they char. The window of perfection is maybe 10 seconds. But the real delicacy, the thing that makes everyone's mouth water, is stroganina. This is the Yakut gift to world cuisine, though the world won't know it for centuries. Stroganina is simplicity itself. Frozen fish or meat sliced paper, thin and eaten raw. But like everything here, the simplicity hides complexity. First, the fish, usually Arctic cisco or muksun, must be caught at exactly the right time, too early in the season, and the fat content is too low. Too late, and the flesh becomes grainy. The fish are pulled from holes, chopped in river ice, killed instantly by the cold, and stored in snow caves where the temperature stays constant. The cutting requires skill that takes years to develop. Tuyara pulls out a whole frozen cisco, hard as stone. Using her personal knife, every Yakut has one, decorated with personal symbols and never loaned to any once he begins shaving. The slices must be thin enough to melt on the tongue, but thick enough to hold together. Too much pressure, and the fish shatters. Too little, and you can't cut through. Each slice curls as it's cut, forming delicate spirals that would make a Japanese sushi chef nod in approval. The fish is served immediately, before it can thaw even slightly. You dip it in salt if you're wealthy enough to have salt or seal oil mixed with crushed berries. The first taste is cold. Then comes the burst of concentrated fish flavour. Then the richness of fat that coats your mouth. It's raw fish elevated to art. No parasites because the cold kills them. No bacteria because nothing survives these temperatures. Just pure, concentrated nutrition that your body can process immediately without wasting energy on digestion. But Tuyara isn't done. This is a special meal because they have guests coming traders from another clan who might have news from the south. So she prepares oyogos, the crown jewel of Yakut cuisine. This is whipped cream, but not any whipped cream you've ever imagined. The cream comes from their cows, so rich it's almost yellow. In summer, this would be impossible cream spoils in hours, but in winter, everything is a freezer. Tuyara pours cream into a special wooden bowl, carved from a single piece of birch, with symbols that supposedly enhance the whipping process. She adds cloudberries preserved in their own juice, a handful of pine nuts traded from the Evunk neighbours, and the secret ingredients now. Not just any snow. Fresh snow, fallen within the hour, so cold it squeaks when compressed. The snow supercools the cream while adding air. Tuyara whips with a wooden implement that looks like a tiny canoe paddle, her movements rhythmic and precise. The cream expands, incorporates the berries, turns pink, then rises into peaks that hold their shape like concrete. The final product tastes like winter itself made edible. The cream coats your mouth with fat that your body craves. The berries provide tartness and vitamin C. The pine nuts add protein and a subtle crunch. It's dessert, medicine, and survival food all in one. The guests arrive as the meal finishes cooking. 3 men and 2 women, all wrapped in so many furs, they look like walking haystacks. The greeting ritual takes forever because no one removes their outer layers immediately. To do so would be to shock the body. Instead, they stand near the door, slowly warming, ice melting from their fur hoods and beards. One of the men, clearly the leader, carries news that makes everyone lean forward. The southern clans speak of strangers, he says, accepting a bowl of kyorchek with hands that shake slightly from cold. Men with hair like dried grass and eyes like summer sky, they carry thundersticks that kill from afar. These are the first rumours of Russians, though no one knows that yet. The Yakuts have dealt with outsiders before Chinese traders, Mongol tax collectors, Evenk reindeer herders. But men with thundersticks? This is new. This is worrying. The meal becomes a social event, which in Yakut culture means sharing everything. Food, news, warmth, stories. The fermented mare's milk comes out kumis that's been aging since summer, now thick as cream and potent enough to make your eyes water. Everyone drinks from the same bowl, passed clockwise, because that's how the sun moves when it exists. The conversation flows between bites of blood pancake and sips of pine needle tea. The traders report that the ice roads are good this year, frozen solid enough to support loaded sleds. They've seen wolf packs moving south, which means the hunting will be poor. The reindeer herds are healthy but skittish. Something is changing in the world beyond the frozen rivers. Tuyara serves the oyogos, and even these hardened travellers make appreciative noises. Good food is currency here, more valuable than gold because you can't eat gold. The pink whipped cream disappears in minutes. Everyone's savouring the sweetness that's so rare, it might as well be magical. As the meal ends, the real business begins, trading. The visitors have brought items from their journey. Chinese iron that doesn't brittlize in cold, seal oil from the northern coasts, and most precious of all, salt. Real salt, not the bitter stuff scraped from certain lake shores. In return, they want the one thing this clan produces better than anyone, worked metal. Sulis's uncle is the blacksmith, trained by his father, who was trained by his father stretching back to when the Yakut still lived in grasslands. The techniques for working iron in extreme cold are secrets worth more than cattle. You can't just heat, and hammer metal behaves differently when the ambient temperature is 60 below. It shatters instead of bending. It cools too fast to work properly. The secret is the underground forge built into a natural hot spring. Yes, hot springs exist here, bubbling up through permafrost in defiance of physics. The Yakut built their smithies around these spots, using the constant warmth to maintain working temperatures. The spring also provides mineral-rich water for quenching, creating alloys that European smiths won't discover for centuries. The negotiations take hours. This isn't just commerce, diplomacy, entertainment, and social bonding rolled into one. Each side pretends the other's goods are worthless while secretly desperate to trade. The kumis flows freely, tongues loosen, and laughter fills the smoky air. By evening, deals are struck. The traders will stay the night travelling after dark. In winter, is suicideand, leave at first light. Tomorrow's another day of survival, but tonight there's warmth, food, and companionship. The 3 things that make life in the coldest place on earth not just bearable, but worth living. Tuyara cleans up with the help of younger cousins. Every scrap saved, every drop of fat preserved. The wooden bowls are wiped with moss, then the moss is saved for fire starter. The iron pots are scraped clean, the residue fed to the dogs who sleep in the entrance tunnel. Nothing is waste here. Everything has a second purpose, a third purpose, a final purpose. As darkness falls real darkness now, not the blue twilight of morning, the family settles in for the evening. Stomachs full of calories, bodies warm from fermented milk, spirits lifted by successful trading. Outside, the temperature drops another 10 degrees. Trees crack like gunshots. The stars shine with a brilliance that hurts to look at. Inside, someone begins to tell a story. An Olonko, one of the epic tales that can last all night. The hero is battling demons who tried to steal the sun. Everyone knows how it ends, but that's not the point. The point is the telling, the shared experience, the warmth of human voices pushing back against the cold dark. Your ancestors, sitting in their temperate climates with their fresh vegetables and running water, would think this life impossible. They'd be right. It is impossible. The Yakut just refuse to accept that. There's no school in 14th century Yakutia, not the kind you're thinking of anyway. No buildings dedicated to education, no books, no pencils, no standardized tests. But make no mistake, education here is more rigorous than any modern curriculum, because failing a test means failing to survive another winter. Sulus's youngest brother, Kereshin, is 8 winters old. In your world, he'd be learning multiplication tables. In his, he's learning which ice thickness supports a horse, how to read weather in the flight patterns of ravens, and why you never, ever trust spring ice, no matter how solid it looks. His classroom is everywhere. His teachers are everyone who's lived long enough to have something worth teaching. This morning, Kerechin wakes to his father's hand on his shoulder. Not gentle. Yakut parents don't do gentle. Gentle gets you killed here. The shake is firm, purposeful, accompanied by the words every child learns to dread and anticipate. Today, you learn. What he's learning today would make modern parents call child protective services. He's going on his first solo trip to check the fishing holes. 2 miles across frozen river, in negative 55 degrees, alone, at 8 years old. But first, preparation. Because sending a child out unprepared isn't education, it's murder. Kerechin's mother takes charge, her movements efficient and unsentimental. She's lost 2 children already, one to winter sickness, one to river ice, that looked solid but wasn't. She won't lose another to carelessness. The dressing ritual for a child is even more critical than for adults. Children lose heat faster, their smaller bodies unable to maintain core temperature as efficiently. Each layer is checked, rechecked, blessed with whispered words that might be prayers or might be instructions. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. The base layer is rabbit kit fur, softer than adult rabbit, turned inside so the fur touches skin. Over that, puppy furries, puppies. The Yakut breed dogs specifically for fur, and the puppies that don't survive their first winter provide the softest, warmest material available. It seems cruel to you. Here, it's honouring the dead by protecting the living. Layer after layer builds, each one a size larger to trap air. The final coat is made from wolf pups, with a hood that extends far past the face, creating a tunnel of warm air. Kerechin can barely move by the time she's done. That's the point. Children who run around get sweaty. Sweaty children die. His boots deserve special mention. Child-sized boots are impossibly precious because children's feet grow, but winter doesn't care. These are made from unborn calf, skin the softest, most supple leather, available with soles of walrus hide, traded from the coastal peoples. Between the inner and outer boot is a layer of duck down, collected feather by feather during summer molting. The mittens are connected by a string running through the sleeves. Lose a mitten, lose fingers. The string means even if one falls off, it's still attached. Simple, effective. The kind of solution you develop after watching too many children come home with blackened fingers that need cutting off. But clothing is just the beginning. Kereshin needs tools. His child-sized knife, forged by his uncle from meteoric iron, the only iron that stays flexible in extreme cold. A leather pouch of emergency supplies, dried meat, a small fire-starting kit, and most importantly, a whistle made from swan bone. Not for calling help sound, doesn't carry well in extreme cold. The whistle is for scaring away wolves. His father leads him outside for the real education. First lesson, reading the snow. Fresh snow squeaks underfoot in a particular way when it's safe. Old snow has layers, and each layer tells a story. This darker band? That was the warm spell 2 weeks ago. This grainy section? Wind-packed and solid? This smooth part that looks perfect? Death trap. Water underneath, frozen on top, just enough to look safe. They walk to the river, Kereshin following exactly in his father's footsteps. Not approximately, exactly. Each foot placement tested by someone who knows the cost of assumptions. At the river's edge, his father stops and points to the ice. What do you see? Kereshin knows this is a test. Everything is a test when failure means the river takes you. He examines the surface carefully, looking for the signs he's been taught since he could walk. The colour is good, he says, his voice muffled by the fur hood. Dark blue, black. But there, he points to a section near the bank. Lighter blue. And the snow pattern changes. His father nods once. High praise in Yakut pedagogy. The boy has spotted the pressure ridge where current underneath creates thin spots. These kill more people than wolves, cold, and starvation combined. Next lesson, the fishing holes. There are 6 of them, chopped through 3 feet of ice and maintained daily. Let them freeze over and you're starting from scratch. The holes are marked with tall poles, necessary because blowing snow can obscure everything at ground level. But poles alone aren't enough. You need to know the pattern, the rhythm of where they're placed. If the snow covers everything, his father asks, how do you find the holes? Kereshin recites what he's memorized. 17 steps from the big rock that looks like a sleeping bear. Turn toward where the sun rises in summer. 40 steps to the first hole. The others are 100 steps apart, in a line toward the old burned tree. But knowing and doing are different things. His father gestures for him to lead. This is how you learn in -50 by doing, with someone watching who will intervene just before death, but not a moment sooner. The boy sets off, counting steps aloud. His child's stride is shorter than the adult measurements, so he has to calculate. This is mathematics with consequences. At step 15 from the rock, he pauses, confused. The landscape looks different from this angle, without his father leading. He turns, looking for landmarks. There 3 trees that grow together, bent by decades of north wind. And there hill that looks like a whale's back. He triangulates, adjusts his path, continues counting. His father follows silently, close enough to grab him if he heads toward thin ice, far enough that the lesson sticks. Finding the first hole is triumph. It's marked by its pole, yes, but also by the tools hanging from it. The ice chisel for maintenance, the scoop for removing slush, the leather bucket for fish. Kereshin knows the protocol. First, check the ice thickness around the hole by tapping with the chisel. The sound tells you everything. Good ice rings like a bell, bad ice thuds like wet leather. The hole has partially frozen overnight. Skin of new ice, maybe 2 inches thick. Kereshin breaks it with the chisel. his movements clumsy in the thick mittens, but determined. The water below is black as night, seemingly bottomless, though he knows the river is only 20 feet deep here. Now comes the fishing itself. No rod and reel, those are for people who fish for sport, not survival. This is a simple hook made from bone, tied to sinew line, baited with a piece of rancid meat saved specifically for this purpose. The technique isn't about finesse, it's about understanding fish behaviour in winter. Cold water fish are sluggish, conserving energy. They don't chase food. You have to put it right in front of them and wait. Patience isn't a virtue, here it's a survival skill. Kerechin drops the line, lets it sink, then begins the gentle up and down motion his grandfather taught him. Not too fast that spooks them, not too slow that lets them examine the bait too closely. While he fishes, his father continues the lesson. Why do we cut holes here and not there? He asks, pointing to another section of river. The current, Kerechin answers, not taking his eyes off the line. Fish rest in slow water. The bend makes the current slow on this side. And why 6 holes? Because fish move. If one hole gives nothing, another might give plenty. But more than 6, and we can't maintain them all. This is systems thinking disguised as fishing. Understanding connections, patterns, consequences. Every decision cascades into others. Too many holes, and you spend all day maintaining them instead of fishing. Too few, and you might miss where the fish are gathering. A tug on the line interrupts the lesson. Not the sharp strike of a summer fish, but the slow, almost lazy pull of something that can barely be bothered to eat. Kerechin resists the urge to jerk the linear of the lesson learned through repetition. Instead, he steadily pulls, hand over hand, until a white fish emerges through the hole. It's not large, maybe 2 pounds, but it's food. More importantly, it's success. His father shows him how to kill it quickly, with a sharp blow behind the eyes, then let it freeze, instantly, on the ice. No need for coolers here. The world is your freezer. They move to the next hole, but this one holds a lesson of a different sort. As Kerechin approaches, he notices something wrong. The pole is askew, the tools are scattered, and there are tracks in the snow. Large tracks, clawed tracks. Bear, his father says simply. Probably last night. Kerechin feels his heart race. Bears in winter mean desperate bears, hungry bears. Bears that should be hibernating, but aren't because something went wrong with their fat storage, or their den flooded, or they're just too old to sleep properly anymore. His father uses this for teaching too. They examine the tracks together, reading the story written in snow. The bear approached from the north, investigated the hole, probably hoping for easy fish. Found none. Knocked over the pole in frustration. Circled the area, see the pattern of tracks, then headed east toward the forest. What do we do? His father asks. Kerechin thinks. Running is pointless. Bears are faster. Fighting is suicide. The answer comes from stories heard around winter fires. We make noise. Check the other holes quickly. Don't come back alone until the hunters track it. Correct. They bang the chisel against the ice as they work, creating a rhythmic clanging that carries despite the cold. Bears avoid humans when possible. It's the surprise encounters that kill. The rest of the holes yield 3 more fish, a good haul for winter. But the real education is just beginning. Now Kerechin must make the return journey alone, while his father checks the trap lines. This is the test. Can an 8-year-old navigate 2 miles of frozen river, carrying fish, watching for thin ice and desperate bears, in temperatures that kill grown men? His father provides final instructions. If snow comes, what do you do? Find shelter immediately. Don't try to push through. If you hear ice cracking, spread flat, distribute weight, crawl to safety. If the whistle doesn't scare the wolves, drop a fish and keep walking. They want easy food, not fight. Each scenario has been drilled into him through stories, demonstrations, and minor trial runs. Now comes the real test. His father hands him the fish strung through the gills on a leather cordand, points toward home. The smoke from our fire will guide you the last part. Trust your counting, trust your landmarks, trust your teaching. And then he's alone. An 8-year-old boy on a frozen river in temperatures that would horrify modern parents. But here's what you need to understand. Kereshin isn't terrified. He's cautious, alert, focused, but not terrified. Because this is his world. These are his skills. This education doesn't coddle. It creates competence. The journey home takes an hour. He counts steps religiously, checks landmarks constantly, listens for the sounds that mean danger, the crack of shifting ice, the howl of hunting wolves, the grunt of that desperate bear. Twice he stops, uncertain of his path, and carefully reorients himself using the sun's position and the wind direction. The final hill before home seems enormous when you're 8 and wearing 40 pounds of fur. But there's the smoke from the fire, just as his father promised. And there's his mother, watching from the doorway, pretending she wasn't worried. Kereshin enters the house, triumph and fish in hand. He's completed his first solo journey. In your world, this might earn a participation trophy. In his, it earns something far more valuable, the knowledge that he can survive, that education works, that he's one step closer to becoming someone who doesn't just endure the coldest place on earth, but thrives in it. His mother takes the fish without comment praise, makes children soft, but her hand on his shoulder speaks volumes. Tonight, when the Alonko is told, Kereshin will sit with the adults instead of the children. He's earned it. Outside, the temperature continues dropping. Inside, another child has learned that impossible is just another word for unprepared. You think your job is hard? Try blacksmithing when your workshop is colder than your freezer. Try carpentry when wood explodes without warning. Try any profession when the simple act of touching metal with bare skin means leaving part of yourself behind. Bek Timir is the smith. His name literally means strong iron, and he earned it through 20 winters of making the impossible possible. In 14th century Yakutia, a good blacksmith isn't just valuable, he's the difference between Stone Age survival and actual civilization. Without him, there are no knives for cutting frozen meat, no needles for sewing life-saving clothes, no tools for building shelters that don't kill you. His workshop is a marvel of adaptation. Built into a natural hot springen of the few places in this frozen hell where the earth rebels against winter, it maintains just enough heat to work metal. But just enough is relative. The working temperature here would be considered impossibly cold anywhere else. Bek Timir has learned to forge in conditions that would make European smiths weep. This morning, he's attempting something that shouldn't be possible, forging a new axe head in negative 58 degrees. The challenge isn't just the cold, it's what cold does to metal. At these temperatures, iron doesn't bend, it shatters, like glass. One wrong hammer blow, and hours of work become deadly shrapnel. The secret is the hot spring. Not just for heat, but for the minerals in the water. Sulfur, magnesium, traces of copper, they create natural alloys when used for quenching. The Yakut discovered this through centuries of trial and error, developing techniques that won't be invented in Europe for another 300 years. Bek Timir begins by selecting his iron. Not all iron is equal. especially here. The best comes from bog iron, formed in swamps where bacteria concentrate iron from groundwater. But there's another source, one that makes Yakut metalwork legendary: meteoric iron. The sky iron, as they call it, that falls from heaven already alloyed with nickel, making it resistant to cold brittleness. He has a small supply of sky iron, worth more than cattle, each piece carefully hoarded, waiting for projects worthy of its properties. Today's axe isn't sky iron worthy that's saved for knives and special tools, but he adds a small amount to regular iron, just enough to change its character. The furnace is the heart of the operation, built from stones that can withstand repeated heating and cooling without cracking. Another knowledge set gained through deadly experience. The fuel isn't wood, which burns too fast and too cool. It's charcoal, made during summer in special pits, burned slow to create carbon that gives steel its strength. But here's where it gets interesting. Bektemir doesn't work alone. Can't. In extreme cold, you need assistant hands because your own might be too numb to hold tools properly. His nephew, Mitchell, tends the bellows leather bags that force air into the furnace, maintaining temperature. The rhythm is hypnotic. Pump, pump, rest. Pump, pump, rest. Too fast, and you burn the metal. Too slow, and it cools below working temperature. Michel has been learning this rhythm for 3 years. In another 2, he might be trusted with actual metalwork. When the iron glows properly cherry red, though the colour looks different in the weird light of the underground forge, Bektemir moves fast. He has maybe 30 seconds before the metal cools too much to work. The hammer rings against the anvil, each blow calculated. In normal temperatures, you can take your time, reheat as needed. Here, reheating risks thermal shock that shatters everything. The technique is unlike anything taught in warmer climates. Instead of drawing out the metal in long pulls, he works in quick, light taps, building the shape gradually, never stressing the crystal structure too much at once. It takes 5 times longer than normal forging, but normal forging here means explosive failure. Between heating cycles, Bektemir works on smaller projects. Needles are the constant request. Not sewing needles though, those too, but specialised needles for different purposes. Fir needles with triangular points that separate rather than pierce. Leather needles with cutting edges. Bone needles for decorative work. Each requires different techniques, different alloys. The needle-making process shows the true mastery required. He takes wire drawn out painfully over hours and cuts it into lengths. Each piece is heated just enough to soften, then shaped with tools so fine they look like jewellery implements. The eye is punched with a special tool requiring perfect timing. Too hot and the metal deforms. Too cold and it cracks. But Bektemir's real innovation is in his knife designs. The Yakut knife, which will become famous across Siberia, perfectly adapted to extreme cold use. The blade is asymmetric, with one flat side and one beveled. This allows for precise cutting of frozen meat and fish, following the natural structure of the material. The handle is oversized, usable with mittens, wrapped in leather that won't freeze to skin. The forging of a knife is ceremony as much as craft. The customer today, it's a young hunter named Iol, provides personal items to be incorporated. A piece of his grandfather's knife, broken but still holding spiritual power. A silver coin traded from Chinese merchants, melted and alloyed for luck. These aren't superstitions. They're connections, making the tool extension of the user. While Bektemir works metal across the settlement, other essential trades continue despite the cold. Irel the carpenter faces his own challenges. wood in extreme cold doesn't behave like wood anywhere else. It becomes brittle, unpredictable. The sap inside freezes, expands, and can cause logs to explode with the sound of gunshots. Errol is building a new sled, and in Yakutia, sleds aren't simple transport. They're engineering marvels that must flex without breaking, carry enormous loads, and survive impacts that would destroy modern vehicles. The design has been refined over centuries, each curve and joint placed for maximum strength with minimum weight. He works with larch always, larch for anything structural. Pine is too soft, birch too brittle in cold, but even larch must be selected carefully. Summer cut wood is useless, too much moisture that freezes and splits. Only winter cut wood from trees that have already adapted to cold will work. The runners are the critical component. They must be flexible enough to conform to uneven ice, strong enough to support hundreds of pounds, and smooth enough to glide efficiently. Errol shapes them using steamer precious resource that requires careful fire management. The wood is heated just enough to bend, then locked into forms made from split logs. But here's the genius part. The runners aren't just wood, they're composite structures. The bottom is shod with bone whale bone when available, cattle bone when not. The bone is attached using a glue made from fish bladders, boiled down to concentrate the collagen. This glue stays flexible in cold, where modern adhesives would crack. Between the wood and bone is a layer of leather, creating a shock-absorbing sandwich. The whole assembly is lashed together with sinew, which shrinks when dry, creating joints stronger than any nail or screw. When complete, the runner can flex several inches without breaking, essential for navigating pressure ridges and rough ice. The sled body follows similar principles. Every joint is lashed, not nailed. Every surface that might see stress is reinforced with rawhide. The loading platform is woven from thin larch strips, creating a surface that's both strong and flexible. It looks primitive to modern eyes, but it's actually sophisticated engineering disguised as simplicity. Meanwhile, Daria works on clothing repairs. In Yakutia, seamstress isn't just a profession, it's a survival skill that borders on art. She specializes in winter clothing, which means understanding how different furs behave, how to create seams that won't leak heat, and how to repair garments that might be the only thing standing between the wearer and death. Today she's working on a Dohath massive overcoat that serves as mobile shelter. The customer, a trader named Tolon, ripped it on a branch while navigating forest trails. In warmer climates, this would be simple repair. Here, it's surgery. First, she must match the fur. Not just the tight wolverine in this case, but the direction of growth, the length, the colour. Fur has grain like wood, and if patched wrong, it creates weak spots where wind can penetrate. She selects from her supply, saved from various sources, testing each piece against the original. The sewing itself requires tools and techniques unknown elsewhere. Her needles forged by Bec Timirare, works of art. The thread isn't thread at all, but sinew, taken from caribou legs, split into impossibly thin strands, and twisted into cord stronger than modern fishing line. The stitches are so fine they're nearly invisible, each one pulling the fur together without creating gaps. But Daria's real skill shows in her innovations. She's developed a double seam technique that creates air pockets for extra insulation. She knows how to place reinforcements where stress concentrates elbows, shoulders, areas that see constant movement. She understands that clothing here isn't just covering its architecture. The parkas she creates can last decades with proper care. They're passed down through generations, each repair adding to their history. Some carry the stitches of 5 or 6 seamstresses, a tangible connection to the past. In a world where everything is temporary, these garments achieve a kind of immortality. Across the settlement, other essential work continues. Silgin tends the cattle, a job that in these temperatures requires the skills of a veterinarian, engineer, and magician combined. The cattle barn isn't just shelter, it's a carefully managed ecosystem where temperature, humidity, and air quality must be balanced perfectly. Too warm and the cattle sweat, which freezes when they go outside. Too cold and they burn calories just standing still. Too humid and ice builds up on the walls, eventually collapsing inward. Too dry and respiratory problems develop. Silgin monitors all of this through signs invisible to untrained eyes. The way the cattle stand, the frost patterns on the walls, the smell of their breath. When a cow shows signs of illness and in these conditions, illness comes fast and fatal. Silgin becomes a traditional veterinarian. No antibiotics, no modern drugs, just knowledge passed down through generations. Willow bark tea for fever, fermented mare's milk for digestive issues, smoke treatments for respiratory problems. Most importantly, isolation to prevent spread. The day continues with everyone engaged in the constant work of survival. Children gather snow for melting, but only the right snow, fresh and clean. Teenagers maintain the ice roads, filling cracks that could catch sled runners. Adults hunt, fish, tend livestock, repair tools, prepare food, and perform the 1,000 other tasks that keep death at bay. As darkness falls searly, always early in winter, the work doesn't stop. It moves indoors. Bektemir continues forging by firelight. Errol shapes sled components with knife and patience. Daria sews by the light of oil lamps, her stitches never wavering despite the dimness. This is work in the coldest place on earth. Not the desperate scramble you might expect, but organised, skillful, purposeful labour. Every person, a specialist in survival. Every skill honed to perfection because imperfection kills. Every day a testament to human ingenuity in the face of impossible conditions. Your job might be stressful, but at least your tools don't explode. Finding love when you're wrapped in 40 pounds of fur and haven't bathed properly since September presents unique challenges. Yet the Yakut manage romance, marriage, and complex social relationships in conditions that would freeze most people's hearts as solid as their spit. Kyuni is 19 winters old and considered prime marriage material. She can sew a waterproof seam blindfolded, knows 17 different ways to prepare frozen fish, and once kept her family's fire burning for 3 days straight during a blizzard while everyone else was sick. In your world, these might not be top dating profile qualities. In hers, they're better than a trust fund. The problem is meeting eligible men when leaving your balagan might kill you. Summer is the traditional courting season, those precious few weeks, when you can actually see faces instead of fur bundles. But Kyuni's summer was spent cutting hay like everyone else, working dawn to dusk to ensure the cattle survive another winter. Romance takes a back seat to not starving. So winter courtship evolved its own rules, its own rituals, its own impossibly complex dance of interest and negotiation. It starts with the Oymyakon, the summer festival, but smaller gatherings that happen throughout winter when conditions allow. Usually during the full moon, when travel is marginally less suicidal. Tonight is such a gathering. 3 families converging at the largest balagan in the area, owned by Toyon Batalar, whose wealth is measured in cattle and marriageable children. The temperature is -52, positively balmy by local standards. The moon is bright enough to cast shadows on the snow, perfect conditions for what passes as a party here. Kyuni prepares with her sisters and cousins. This isn't just vanity, it's strategy. Marriage here isn't about love at first sight. It's about alliance, survival, and genetic diversity in a population scattered across impossible distances. But that doesn't mean attraction doesn't matter. It just means attraction includes practical considerations like, can he keep a fire burning? And, does his family own enough cattle? The preparation is elaborate despite the constraints. Hair is rebraided with small silver ornaments, traded from Chinese merchants and passed down through generations. The parting matter straight means unmarried and looking. Zigzag means considering offers. Braided crown means spoken for. Cuny parts hers ruler straight. No ambiguity. Her best doha comes out. The one with wolverine trim and subtle decorative stitching that shows her sewing skills without being ostentatious. Beneath it, layers chosen for warmth, but also for the way they move. Even wrapped like a mountain, a woman wants to feel beautiful. The fur is brushed until it gleams. Seal oil, mixed with herbs, creates something approaching perfume. The journey to Toyon settlement takes 2 hours by horse-drawn sled. Cuny rides with her family grouperants, unmarried siblings, a few cousins for propriety. The sled is covered with furs, creating a mobile cave where body heat accumulates. Still cold enough to hurt, but survivable. They're not the only ones travelling. Other sleds converge from different directions, dark shapes against moonlit snow. Each group times their arrival carefully. Too early seems desperate. Too late misses the best food. The sweet spot is just as the first round of kumis starts flowing. The balagan is massive by local standards, able to hold 50 people without suffocating them. The fire burns hot and bright, fed constantly by younger children whose job is to ensure warmth never falters. The smoke is thick, but nobody complains. Smoke means heat, means life. Inside, the social dynamics would fascinate anthropologists. Despite the crowding, despite everyone knowing everyone, there are strict protocols. Unmarried women sit on the south side, unmarried men on the north. Married couples create a buffer zone. Children and elders fill the spaces between conscious chaperones in a world where privacy doesn't exist. Kioni spots him immediately. Nitschek, 22 winters, from a settlement 3 days north. She's seen him exactly 4 times in her life, twice at summer gatherings, once during a trading expedition, and once when his family sought shelter during a blizzard. Each meeting lasted hours at most. This is what passes for extensive courtship here. He's gained status since last summer. The silver ornaments on his belt indicate successful hunting. The quality of his knife sheath shows wealth. Most importantly, he's still alive. In a place that kills the careless, the weak, and the unlucky, simple survival into your 20s demonstrates genetic worth. The evening begins with formal greetings. Each family group acknowledged, their health inquired after, their cattle numbers delicately probed. News is shared who died, who was born, who lost cattle to wolves, who found a new fishing spot. This isn't small talk. It's intelligence gathering crucial for survival. Then comes food. The host family demonstrates wealth through abundance, not the showy excess of warmer climates, but careful display of preserved plenty. Stroganina arranged in artistic spirals, blood sausage sliced precisely, fermented fish presented on wooden plates carved with family symbols. Everyone eats, everyone praises, everyone knows exactly how much this cost in summer labour. The kumis flows freely fermented mare's milk, with alcohol content that varies wildly depending on who made it and how long it aged. Toyon Batala's kumis is legendary, strong enough to warm bellies without destroying judgment. The drinking horn passes clockwise, each person taking a sip, making sure everyone gets equal share. Now comes the entertainment that doubles as courtship display. Young men compete in subtle ways. Backsight demonstrates his strength by bending an iron rodactual bending, not breaking, showing control. Kencheri tells hunting stories that might be partially true, his voice carrying exactly the right mix of bravado and humour. Nichek carves a small figure from larch wood, his knife moving with practiced precision despite thick gloves. The young women have their own displays. Sayana sings traditional songs, her voice high and clear despite the smoke. Akina shows off embroidery work that must have taken months, each stitch invisible to the naked eye. Kyoni tells stories to the children, demonstrating patience, intelligence, and the kind of voice that could soothe babies through long winter nights. But the real courtship happens in glances. In the way Nichek's eyes find Kyune's across the fire, in how she doesn't look away immediately, but doesn't hold the gaze too long either. In the studied casualness with which he moves closer to her side of the fire to help with serving food. In how she accepts his help without comment, but ensures their hands briefly touch when passing bowls. In a world where everyone sees everything, subtlety is key. Too obvious, and you become gossip fodder. Too subtle, and opportunities pass. The balance is delicate, as ice fishing gone wrong move, and everything breaks. The formal dancing begins as the evening deepens, not the wild movements of warmer cultures, but careful, controlled steps that work within the constraints of heavy clothing and limited space. The Oshukai is a circle dance where everyone links arms, moving slowly sunwise around the fire. The steps are simple, the meaning is not. Where you position yourself matters. Kyuni ensures she's 3 people away from Nichek close enough to show interest, far enough to maintain propriety. During the dance, positions shift. Somehow, through careful maneuvering disguised as random movement, they end up side by side. The touch of arms through layers of fur shouldn't be electric. But when you've spent months touching nobody outside your immediate family, when human contact is rationed like food, even this formal connection carries weight. They dance, connected and proper, while the fire crackles and the elders pretend not to watch. Later, during a break for more food, Nichek approaches Kyoni's father. The conversation appears casual discussion of hunting territories, weather patterns, the eternal question of whether this winter is worse than last. But everyone knows what's really happening. He's establishing himself as worthy of consideration. Kyoni and her sisters retreat to the women's corner, where intense whispered conferences occur. His family's cattle numbers are discussed, his reputation analysed. That time, 2 winters ago, when he saved his younger brother from thin ice, gets major points. The fact that his grandmother is difficult gets weighed against his mother's skill with healing herbs. The consensus? Promising, but not guaranteed. More information needed. Which in this culture means more gatherings, more careful observation, more subtle negotiations between families. Romance moves at the speed of seasons here, not weeks. As the night deepens, couples who are further along in courtship demonstrate what Kyuni might expect. Michel and Tuyara, engaged last summer, sit together openly now. Still separated by propriety, but clearly a unit. They share food from the same bowler huge statement. Their families discuss bride price in terms of cattle and worked metal, negotiations that sound mercenary, but ensure both young people start married life with resources to survive. The unmarried men stage competitions that grow increasingly elaborate as Kyumi's consumption increases. Wrestling matches where the goal is to unbalance, not injure. Knife-throwing contests at targets made of packed snow. Stories that grow more outrageous with each telling. All designed to display fitness, skill, and humour, the 3 qualities that matter most in a husband here. The women respond with their own displays. Complex braiding techniques demonstrated on younger girls' hair. throat singing that harmonizes with the wind outside. Mathematical calculations of how many cattle can survive on different qualities of hay performed entirely in their heads. These aren't party tricks, they're survival skills packaged as entertainment. Near midnight though, time is fluid. When darkness is constant, the gathering reaches its peak. An elder begins an olonko, one of the epic tales that can last hours. This one is carefully chosen. The story of two lovers separated by distance and united through cleverness. Everyone knows why this particular tale tonight. During the performance, seating arrangements shift again. Somehow, Cuny ends up near enough to Nishek that whispered comments about the story can be exchanged. Their words are innocent observations about the hero's choices, appreciation for the teller's skill. But the subtext runs deeper. Each comment reveals intelligence, humour, personality. By the time the gathering ends, dawn is still hours away, but exhaustion sets in. Families prepare for departure, wrapping themselves in layers, checking harnesses, ensuring everyone is accounted for. Nicek helps load Cuny's family sled, purely helpful, nothing more. His hand brushes hers as he passes her the reins. This time, the touch is definitely intentional. The ride home is quiet, each person lost in thought or sleeping. Cuny replays every interaction, analysing meanings like a scholar with ancient texts. Her mother, who missed nothing, offers sparse commentary. Good family, strong stock. Grandmother is difficult, but dying soon. High praise in a culture where marriage means joining not just lives, but survival networks. Where choosing wrong doesn't mean divorce court, but potential starvation. Where love is luxury, but partnership is necessity. Back home, as the family settles for what remains of night, Cuny allows herself to imagine summer gathering, formal negotiations, bride price settled. Moving to his family's settlement, or his to hers, depending on need. Children who inherit his steady hands and her sharp mind. Growing old in a world that kills the young. It's not the romance of fairy tales. But in negative 60 degrees, fairy tales freeze solid. This is better real warmth in a cold world, partnership against the dark, love that serves survival rather than defeating it. Outside, the aurora dances across stars so bright they hurt. Inside, a young woman dreams of a young man while the fire burns low and the cold waits patient as death. Tomorrow brings more work, more winter, more careful steps in the dance of living. But tonight, wrapped in furs and possibility, even the coldest place on earth feels warm with potential. Beneath your feet in 14th century Yakutia lies another world, a frozen underworld that shapes everything above it, from the buildings that don't collapse to the places where the dead wait for spring. The permafrost soil frozen solid for thousands of years isn't just ground. It's architecture, refrigerator, cemetery, and sometimes tomb for the living. Old Saginaw knows the underground better than anyone. 63 winters have taught him secrets that most men take to their graves, which, here, means waiting in frozen storage until the brief summer thaw allows for burial. He's the one they call when a new ice cellar needs cutting, when the permafrost heaves and threatens a balagan, when strange things emerge from ground that's been frozen since before memory. This morning, he's been summoned to investigate a problem. The Harialak family's ice cellar has developed a warm spot. In your world, a warm spot in a basement is annoying. Here, it's catastrophic. Their entire winter food supply months of hunting, fishing and preservation depends on constant freezing. One warm spot can spread like infection, rotting everything. Saginaw prepares for underground work, with the same care a warrior takes for battle. The permafrost is not passive. It shifts, cracks, occasionally collapses. Men have been buried alive in ice cellars, frozen so quickly their faces show surprise rather than fear. The ground that seems solid as stone can suddenly become a mouth that swallows. His tools are specialized through generations of refinement. Iron chisels forged to stay sharp in cold that makes most metal brittle. A lamp burning seal oil because other fuels freeze. Leather bags for samples because cloth becomes useless at these temperatures. Most importantly, a bone whistle. Not for music, for warning. If the ceiling starts to fall, you have seconds to alert those above. The entrance to the Karyalak ice cellar is typically a slanted tunnel, cut at precisely the right angle. Too steep, and you can't haul food in and out. Too shallow, and warm air infiltrates. This one drops 8 feet over a 12-foot run, optimal for temperature maintenance. The walls are smooth as glass, carved from permafrost that's harder than concrete. Saginach descends carefully. Each step tests the ground. Permafrost can hide pockets of unfrozen Soyensky, they call them. Fall through into a Lensky, and you're trapped in mud that might as well be quicksand, surrounded by walls too hard to dig through. Your body heat melts more mud, which refreezes around you. Not a pleasant death. The main chamber opens up like a frozen cathedral. 15 feet wide, 20 feet long, 7 feet high. The ceiling is carved in an arch that distributes weight, preventing collapse. The walls are covered in ice crystals that glitter in the lamplight like diamonds. Beautiful, but Saginach isn't here for beauty. He's looking for anomalies. The Karyalak family has done well. Shelves carved directly into the permafrost hold-wrapped packages fish, meat, berries preserved in ice. Leather bags hang from bone hooks, contents frozen solid. In one corner, special delicacies. Swan eggs gathered last spring, cloudberries in sealed containers, even Chinese tea traded at enormous cost. But therein, the northeast corner, Saginach sees the problem. The ice on the wall is different, clearer, newer, and the packages nearby show signs of thawing and refreezing. He approaches carefully, holding the lamp high. The permafrost here feels different under his experienced touch. Warmer, softer. He chips away at the surface with his chisel, revealing the issue. A vein of unfrozen water, probably from an underground spring, has found a path through the permafrost. It's like cancer in frozen flesh, spreading slowly but inevitably. Left unchecked, it will destroy the entire cellar. The solution requires expertise accumulated over centuries. First, the infected area must be excavated completely. Every bit of compromised permafrost removed. Then, during the coldest part of winter soon, fortunately water is poured in controlled amounts, allowed to freeze in layers, building a new frozen wall. It's delicate work. Too much water at once, and you create more problems. Too little, and the seal isn't complete. But Saginach's work goes beyond maintenance. He's also the keeper of underground memories, the one who knows where things are buried and why. As he works, he tells young Urchin, here to learn the trade, about other cellars, other secrets. 3 settlements over, he says, chiselling carefully. There's a cellar that goes down 30 feet, built by Oymyakon the Wealthy before my grandfather's time. He thought deeper meant safer. Found a pocket of ancient air trapped under the permafrost, opened it up and breathed death. Whole family gone in moments. We sealed it with stones and prayers. Never dig below 20 feet. These aren't just stories, they're survival instructions wrapped in narrative. The permafrost holds things besides ice gases from decomposed matter thousands of years old, bacterial pockets that release toxins, occasionally remains of animals that died before human memory. Disturb the wrong layer and consequences follow. The work continues through the morning. Saginac shows Urchin how to read permafrost layers like a book. This dark band? That's from the Great Fire 60 years ago when the forest burned for weeks. This yellowish layer? Ancient pollen from when this land was warmer. This section with vertical cracks? Dangerous means the ground above shifts seasonally. They reach the source of the warm, veined, tiny spring, no bigger than a child's finger, but enough to doom the cellar. Saginac performs the delicate operation of redirecting it, using channels cut at exact angles to lead the water away from stored food. The channels must slope correctly, or they'll freeze and back up. Another calculation where error means disaster. While they work, more stories emerge. The ice cellar that became a tomb when a family was trapped during a blizzard. The one where mammoth ivory emerged from a war traded to Chinese merchants for enough iron to outfit a generation. The cellar where strange drawings appeared on the ice, patterns no one could explain, eventually abandoned as cursed. The earth remembers, Saginac says, a phrase that carries more weight than poetry. In permafrost, nothing truly disappears. Bodies buried improperly surface decades later, perfectly preserved. Items lost in summer are found centuries later when erosion exposes them. The frozen ground is a library of everything that ever fell upon it. This has practical implications for burial customs. In summer, when the top layer thaws just enough, the Yakut bury their dead quickly. But winter deaths, which are most death's present problems. You can't dig through permafrost with hand tools. You can't leave bodies exposed, or animals will scatter them, so you store them. The morgue cellar is separate from food storage, obviously. Located downwind and downstream from the settlement, it's a grim necessity that no one discusses more than necessary. Bodies are wrapped in birch bark and fur, placed in carved niches, and wait. Sometimes for months. Spring burial season is busy with both grief and relief. But even death storage requires expertise. Bodies must be positioned correctly, or they freeze in shapes that won't fit in graves. The temperature must be constant too warm, and decay begins. Too cold, and the bodies become so brittle they shatter when moved. Saginac has overseen more winter storage than he cares to count, each one a reminder that in Yakutia, even death bows to the seasons. The work in the Charialak cellar takes all day. By evening, the warm spot is excised. New frozen barriers are beginning to form, and the food supply is safe. Payment comes in the form of preserved fish, and a promise of help when Saginac needs his own cellar maintained. Currency here is reciprocal survival. But the underground world extends beyond storage. The Yakut have learned to use permafrost for construction, creating foundations that would impress modern engineers. A building placed directly on frozen ground will sink as body heat melts the surface, so they build on stilts, allowing cold air to circulate beneath, keeping the permafrost stable. Except when they don't want stable. Some structures use controlled melting to sink supports deep into ground that then refreezes around them, creating anchors stronger than any footing. It's engineering that requires understanding soil mechanics, thermal dynamics, and patience. Get it wrong, and your balagan tilts, cracks, collapses. The most impressive underground structures are the cattle barns. These semi-subterranean buildings use the Earth's insulation while avoiding the permafrost's threats. Dug just deep enough to escape wind, but not so deep they hit permanent ice. They maintain temperatures that keep cattle alive through impossible cold. Young Urchin learns all this through watching, doing, occasionally failing. Today's lesson includes a near disaster when he strikes too hard with his chisel, sending cracks spreading through a wall. Saginak stops him with a harsh word, then shows how to read the stress patterns, how to relieve pressure without causing collapse. Every mistake is education, assuming you survive it. The underground also holds spiritual significance. The Yakut believe the earth has 3 layers: upper world of sky spirits, middle world of humans, and lower world of earth spirits. The permafrost is literally the ceiling of the underworld. Disturb it carelessly, and you might anger beings better left sleeping. This isn't superstition, it's encoded wisdom. Places where permafrost behaves strangely often have practical dangers. That spot where no cellar stays frozen might have underground water. That area where the ground sounds hollow might be above an ancient buried lake. Spirits are how you teach children to avoid dangers they can't understand. As darkness falls, which in winter means by mid-afternoon, Saginak performs a small ritual before leaving the cellar. A splash of kumis on the ground, a whispered prayer to the earth spirits, thanks for allowing intrusion. Urchin copies him, understanding that survival here means respecting forces greater than human ambition. The journey back to the surface feels like returning from another world, which, in a way, it is. The underground of Yakutia isn't just frozen dirt, it's history, engineering, spirituality, and survival all locked in ice. Those who master its secrets live. Those who don't join the things waiting in the cold ground for spring. Tomorrow, Saginak will cut a new cellar for a young family. Next week, he'll help diagnose why the shaman's balagan keeps tilting despite solid foundations. Next month, if he lives that long, he'll teach Urchin about the deepest secret the old cellars, the ones dug before memory, that hold things the ancestors buried for good reason. But tonight, he sits by his fire, warming bones that ache from cold stone, and tells his grandchildren sanitized stories of the world below, how ice sings when it's happy, how permafrost protects those who respect it, how the earth remembers everything but forgives those who ask properly. Outside, the ground creaks and groans as temperature drops another degree. Somewhere, a new crack opens in permafrost that's been solid for millennia. Somewhere else, an old cellar settles another inch toward collapse. The underground world continues its slow, frozen dance, with the humans brave enough to live above it. In the coldest place on earth, even the ground beneath your feet is trying to kill you. The Yakut have simply learned to negotiate terms. Summer in Yakutia arrives like a violent friend you haven't seen in years, sudden, overwhelming, and gone before you remember why you missed them. For approximately 50 days, the world transforms from frozen death trap to boggy mosquito hell. The temperature swings from -60 to +90 in the span of weeks. If you think that sounds pleasant, you've never experienced permafrost melt. It's late May, and Sulu's wakes to an alien sound, dripping. After 8 months of crystalline silence broken only by cracking ice and howling wind, the steady drip 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 of melting snow is loud as thunder. It means summer is coming. It means everything is about to change. It means they might survive another year, but first they have to survive summer itself. The transformation begins slowly. The sun, which spent months barely crawling above the horizon, suddenly remembers it has a job. By June, it refuses to set at all, hanging in the sky like a threat. 24 hours of daylight sounds wonderful until you realize it means 24 hours of melting, 24 hours of work, 24 hours of mosquitoes, so thick they've been known to suffocate cattle. The balagan, so carefully insulated against cold, becomes a smoke-filled oven. The dried dung and clay that saved them in winter now traps heat like a diseased blanket. Families move into summer structures lighter, area buildings that would kill you in winter, but provide blessed relief now. The transition requires timing. Move too early, and a late freeze catches you vulnerable. Too late, and you've already suffered heat exhaustion. But the real challenge of summer isn't the heat, it's the ground. Permafrost that's been solid as granite for 8 months suddenly develops a personality. The top layer melts, creating a muddy soup that swallows feet, hooves, and occasionally entire buildings. Walking becomes an exercise in strategic planning. That solid-looking patch, probably a bog that will eat you to the waist. That wet area might actually be firmer than the dry ground. The Yakut have words for different types of summer ground that don't exist in other languages. Bylar is the deceptive crust that looks firm but liquefies under weight. Kotor is the true bog that never pretends to be anything else. Tukalan is the blessed solid ground, usually on slight rises where drainage prevents total saturation. Learning to read these differences means the difference between reaching your destination and spending hours extracting yourself from mud that grips like concrete. For Zulus, and every able-bodied person in the settlement, summer means one thing above all: hay. The cattle that survived winter need food for the next one, and these brief weeks are the only chance to cut, dry, and store enough grass to last 8 months. It's mathematics with deadly stakes. Each cow needs approximately 2 tons of hay. 20 cows means 40 tons. 40 tons means every single day of summer spent cutting, turning, stacking, storing. The alasses those meadow oases that made cattle herding possible here explode with growth. Grass that's been dormant under snow surges upward, growing inches per day in the endless sunlight. But it's not uniform. Some areas produce nutritious sedge grass, others worthless watergrass. Knowing the difference, knowing where to cut, requires generational knowledge written in scars and sweat. Zulus joins the cutting teams at dawn, though dawn is meaningless when the sun never sets. The mosquitoes are already waiting, clouds of them, dense enough to blur vision. These aren't your ordinary mosquitoes. These are Arctic mosquitoes, evolved to compress their entire life cycle into weeks. They're desperate, aggressive, and numerous beyond comprehension. The Yakut combat them with smoke, constantly. Smudge pots burn everywhere dried fungus and herbs that produce thick, choking smoke that mosquitoes allegedly avoid. Allegedly, because Zulus, like everyone, is covered in welts despite the smoke. Exposed skin is a luxury no one can afford. Even in 90-degree heat, they work fully clothed, faces wrapped, only eyes exposed. And still, the mosquitoes find ways in. The scything itself is rhythm made physical. Swing, step, swing, step. The curved blade forged by Bektimir to hold an edge despite constant use whispers through grass, with a sound like sighing. Behind the cutters come the turners, flipping the cut grass to dry evenly in the sun. Behind them, the stackers, building careful piles that shed rain while allowing air circulation. Everyone works. Elders who can barely walk weave grass ropes for binding. Children too small for scythes spread grass to dry. Pregnant women work until labour literally forces them to stop, then return to work days later with babies strapped to their backs. This isn't cruel culture, it's survival mathematics. Every hand idle is hay not cut, cattle not fed, family members dead come winter. The work songs help, ancient rhythms that match. scythe swings, voices harmonizing across the meadows. The songs serve multiple purposes, maintaining pace, warning of dangers, and creating community from brutal labour. Some are wordless, just tones that carry across distance. Others tell stories, usually about lazy workers who didn't cut enough hay and paid the price. Water is the constant need. In winter, you melt snow. In summer, finding clean water becomes a quest. The rivers run brown, with permafrost melt, carrying centuries of accumulated organic matter. Streams that were crystal clear in spring become muddy torrents. The solution is knowing where springs bubble up through still frozen ground, providing water that won't give you the runs that kill as surely as cold. But summer also brings bounty impossible in winter. The rivers, free of ice, swarm with fish, fighting upstream to spawn. The Yakut build weird wooden frameworks that funnel fish into traps. In good years, they catch thousands of pounds in days. The preservation starts immediately. Smoking racks appear everywhere, turning fresh fish into eucalypt that will last through winter. The smell of smoking fish competes with mosquito smudge for dominance. The women gather everything gatherable: cloudberries, cranberries, blueberry start, and precious, providing vitamins that prevent scurvy, wild onions and garlic, herbs that flavour the bland winter diet. Most importantly, larch needles at their peak vitamin C content, dried and stored for the pine needle tea that keeps gums from bleeding in the dark months. Children hunt eggs, learning to find nests without disturbing parent birds who might abandon them. Swan eggs are prizes, huge and rich. Duck eggs are more common, but require wading through mosquito-infested marshes. The eggs are preserved in various ways: dried, fermented, or stored in cool underground caches where permafrost still lurks. But the real treasure of summer is repair and construction. Everything that couldn't be fixed in winter gets attention now. Sulus helps his uncle replace the roof of their balagan, removing the frozen earth covering to reveal logs that have shifted and cracked. Each log is examined, tested, replaced if necessary. The new earth covering is mixed with fresh dung from cattle eating green grasset, will ferment and bond better than winter material. New buildings rise as families expand. A young couple married last winter needs their own balagan. The construction is community effort, everyone contributing labour or materials. The foundation pillars are sunk during the brief window when ground is soft enough to dig, but not so wet it won't hold. It's engineering by instinct and experience, no blueprints or levels, just eyes trained by generation to see true vertical and proper angles. The blacksmith works overtime. Summer is when major metalwork happens. The heat that makes humans miserable makes forging possible without underground hot springs. New knives, axe heads, cooking pots, and dozens of smaller items emerge from Bektimir's forge. The ring of hammer on anvil provides percussion to the symphony of summer work. Trading expeditions arrive, taking advantage of rivers free of ice. Chinese merchants with precious iron and salt. Evenk reindeer herders with furs and antler. Even occasionally Russians, still rare in the 14th century but growing bolder, offering goods no one's seen before in exchange for furs that will eventually decorate European nobility. The brief nights when the sun dips low but never sets bring different activities. Fishing for species that bite better in dimness, hunting birds that roost in reeds, and courtship. Summer is when marriages are negotiated in earnest, when couples can walk together without freezing, when faces emerge from fur to be properly evaluated. Kuni and Nishek, whose winter attraction survived spring's revelations, formalize their engagement. The negotiations between families are complexo many cattle for bride price, where the couple will live, what support each family provides. But the human element matters too. They walk together along the river, accompanied by cousins for propriety, but allowed to talk freely. Plans are made for a life together, children hoped for, dreams shared in the endless twilight. The Yak festival marks summer's peak. This isn't the local gathering of winter, but a massive convergence of clans from across the region. Hundreds of people, thousands of cattle and horses, a temporary city on the grassland. The festival serves every purpose religious ceremony, trading opportunity, marriage market, judicial court, and most importantly, renewal of bonds that isolation strains. The ceremonies are elaborate. Kumis is offered to spirits in every direction. Horses are consecrated for the coming year. The shaman, painted and costumed, dances until exhaustion, travelling between worlds to ensure continued prosperity. Everyone participates in the Oswakai, the circle dance that now includes hundreds, moving around sacred posts in patterns old as memory. But even during celebration, work continues. Deals are struck for winter necessities. Young men demonstrate skills to potential fathers-in-law. Women compare preservation techniques and trade recipes for fermenting fish. Children play games that teach survival skills racing while carrying water without spilling, building miniature balagans, identifying edible plants. As July wanes, urgency increases. The hay must be stacked and covered before rain comes. Fish run slow and must be caught while available. Every clear day is precious because August brings storms, and September brings frost, and October brings death to the unprepared. The mosquitoes, mercifully, begin dying. Mornings show frost on grass, despite days that still warm. The sun, exhausted from its constant vigil, begins setting again. First for minutes, then hours. The world remembers that darkness exists. By late August, winter preparations intensify. The cattle, fat from summer grazing, are evaluated. Some will be slaughtered for winter meat, decisions that balance sentiment against survival. Every animal that winters over is a mouth to feed, but also potential wealth and security. The calculations are ruthless because miscalculation is fatal. The final weeks of summer are bittersweet. Relief that the frantic work is ending. Fear that it wasn't enough. Gratitude for warmth, while dreading cold's return. The landscape transforms again, green fading to gold, fading to brown. Birds that filled the air with song disappear southward, the rivers slow, edges beginning to freeze at night. One morning in early September, Sulus wakes to silence. The dripping has stopped. The mosquitoes are gone. His breath is visible again. Outside, frost covers everything in crystalline white. Summer, that brief, violent friend, has departed without saying goodbye. Time to prepare for the old enemy's return. Time to test whether 50 days of frantic work bought 8 months of survival. Time to remember that in the coldest place on earth, even summer is just another face of the eternal struggle between human stubbornness and nature's indifference. The wheel turns. Winter is coming. In Yakutia, winter is always coming. The question hangs in the frozen air like breath on a winter morning. Why? Why stay in a place that actively tries to kill you? Why raise children where playing outside might mean death? Why choose the hardest possible life when easier ones exist just days of travel south? Old Bayane has lived through 73 winters, making him ancient by any standard and miraculous by Yakutian ones. He's outlived 4 wives, 12 children and countless grandchildren. His fingers are gnarled from frostbite, his eyes clouded by snow blindness, his body a map of scars from battles with cold, animals, and time. Yet when his great-grandson asks why they don't leave for warmer lands, he laughs a sound like ice cracking on a spring river. "Leave?" he wheezes, accepting a bowl of pine needle tea with hands that shake from age, not cold. Where would we go? Who would we become? It's a question that cuts deeper than temperature. The Yakut didn't just adapt to the cold, they became it. Their entire identity, every skill, every piece of knowledge, every spiritual belief is shaped by extreme environment. Take them out of the cold, and who are they? Just another group of displaced nomads, in a world full of them. But it goes beyond identity. Bayane begins listing the reasons, counting on fingers that have been broken and reset so many times they barely bend. First, the land itself. This frozen hell that outsiders fear, it's theirs. Every river bend, every alas meadow, every winter campsite has names, stories, memories, layered like permafrost. His grandfather's grandfather is buried by that grove of larches. His first son took first steps in that summer meadow. His wife sang lullabies in that exact spot by the fire. You don't abandon your ancestors, he says simply. And in Yakut culture, ancestors aren't metaphorical. They're present, watching, judging, helping. The spirits of place are real as ice, and they belong to families who've made proper offerings for generations. Leave, and you leave their protection. Worse, you abandon them to loneliness. Young Keskill, 16, and full of questions, pushes back. He's heard stories from traders about southern lands, where grass grows without human help, where winter means rain instead of death, where people wear single layers of clothing. Why cling to difficulty when ease exists? Bayane's answer comes in stories. Not lecture us the Yakut teach through narrative, embedding lessons in tales that entertain while educating. He tells of Oymyakon the Wanderer, who left for warmer lands during a particularly brutal winter, found paradise in the south green grass, warm rain, easy living. Within a year, his cattle died from diseases they had no immunity to. His children grew soft, unable to endure even mild hardship. When raiders came, they had no ice to retreat across, no cold to discourage pursuit. The family was scattered, enslaved, erased. Cold protects, Bayane summarizes. What kills the weak also shields the strong. It's more than folk wisdom. The Yakut homeland is defensible precisely because it's uninhabitable to others. Mongol armies that conquered from China to Europe stopped at the edge of the true cold. Russian expansion, when it comes in force, will struggle for decades to control what the Yakut know intimately. The cold is armour, moat and weapon combined. But there are positive reasons too, not just negative ones. Tuyara, now a grandmother herself, joins the conversation. She speaks of summers brief, but explosive with life. The berries that grow here, concentrated by short seasons, are sweeter than any southern fruit. The fish, fattened on the boom of summer insects, are richer than anything in warmer waters. Even the cattle, stressed by winter, produce milk and meat with flavours that make southern varieties taste like water. We eat like kings, she says, just not very often. The laughter that follows holds truth. Yakut cuisine, born from scarcity and preservation needs, has created flavours that can't be replicated. That fermented fish that makes outsiders gag, to Yakut palates, it's umami perfection. The blood sausages, the frozen raw meat, the fermented dairy these aren't just survival foods. They're cultural markers, taste memories that define home. A younger voice joins Nichek, now married to Kune, and father to 3 children who've survived their dangerous early years. He speaks of freedom. In the South, he argues, every piece of land is claimed, controlled, taxed. Here, the land is too vast, too harsh for such human pettiness. A man can ride for days without seeing another soul, can hunt where he wishes, fish where he chooses, build where seems best. We bow to nature, he says, but not to men. It's a powerful argument in a world where most people are serfs, slaves, or subjects. The Yakut have chiefs, yes, but leadership here is earned through competence, not inherited through blood. A Toyon who makes bad decisions doesn't last long winter, doesn't care about your lineage. The harsh democracy of survival creates a different social structure, one where individual skill matters more than ancient privilege. The shaman, silent until now, adds the spiritual dimension. The spirits of this land, he explains, are different from southern spirits, stronger, harsher, but also more reliable. You know where you stand with a winter spirited, wants to kill you unless properly appeased. Southern spirits are tricksters, changeable, impossible to predict. Here, the rules are clear. Follow them and live. Break them and die. Simple. Would you rather face an honest enemy or a lying friend? He asks. But perhaps the deepest reason comes from Sulu's himself, now middle-aged, watching his own children prepare for their first solo journeys. He speaks of capability. In the South, people specialise. One person farms, another smiths, a third weaves. Here, everyone must be everything: hunter, herder, builder, healer, weather reader, storyteller. The cold creates complete humans. My son can build a fire in a blizzard, deliver a calf at midnight, navigate by stars hidden behind clouds, and sing the old song's word perfect, he says with quiet pride. Southern boys his age? They can do one thing well. Maybe. It's not arrogance but observation. The Yakut produce generalists because specialists die. Every person contains a complete survival. Toolkit, physical, mental, spiritual. Take any Yakut and drop them naked into winter, and they have a chance. Not a good chance, but a chance. That self-reliance, that complete competence, is addictive. Once you know you can survive anything, why choose a life where that knowledge atrophies? The women have their own reasons. Cuny speaks of equality born from necessity. In the South, she's heard, women are decorative, protected, limited. Here, a woman who can't cut hay is a luxury no family can afford. A wife who can't manage a household through 8 months of darkness is a death sentence. The cold doesn't discriminate by gender, it kills all incompetence equally. My daughters learn everything my sons learn, she states. Different tasks sometimes, but equal importance. The horse doesn't care if a woman or man tends it. The fire doesn't burn hotter for male hands. We are partners in survival, not ornaments for display. The children, listening from their corner, absorb these reasons without fully understanding them. They know only that this is home. These are their people. This is how life is lived. The idea of leaving seems as foreign as the idea of breathing water. They'll understand later, when they're old enough to see alternatives and choose this anyway. As night falls real night now, winter reasserting dominance, the conversation continues. Each person adds reasons, small and large. The way stars look in cold air, so bright they seem touchable. The sound of snow squeaking underfoot, telling stories in its pitch. The taste of fresh air, so cold it burns. so clean it makes everything else seem polluted. The satisfaction of surviving another day, another season, another year. But Bayane saves the ultimate reason for last. He gestures to the fire, burning steady despite wind that finds every crack. Around it sit 4 generations, from infant to ancient, all products of this impossible place. They've lost more family than southern folk can imagine. They've endured hardships that would break softer people, and yet, we stay, he says slowly, because we can, because our ancestors proved it possible, and we prove them right every day we wake up breathing. Because easy life makes weak people, and weak people make nothing worth remembering. Because the world needs to know that humans can live anywhere, endure anything, thrive despite everything. He pauses, eyes focusing on something beyond the fire's light. We stay because leaving would mean admitting the cold won, and the cold hasn't won. Not yet. Not while one Yakut draws breath to curse it. The silence that follows is complete. Even the wind seems to pause, listening. Then Keskil, young and full of questions, nods slowly. He's beginning to understand. The Yakut don't stay despite the cold. They stay because of it. It made them who they are, tough, capable, free. Take away the adversity, and you take away the identity. Tomorrow will bring more challenges. The pregnant cow might calve successfully, or might die trying. The stored hay might last until spring or fall short by crucial weeks. The fish traps might fill or return empty. Someone might break through thin ice, might cough blood from lung sickness, might simply not wake up one frozen morning. But tonight, around this fire that pushes back darkness and death, the reasons for staying seem obvious as breathing. This is home. These are our people. This is our challenge, our triumph, our identity. We are the ones who made the coldest place on earth human. Why would we go anywhere else? The fire burns lower. People begin settling for sleep, wrapped in furs and certainty. Outside, the temperature plummets toward -60. The stars shine with impossible brilliance. Somewhere in the forest, a tree explodes from cold, with a sound like thunder. Just another night in the only home worth having, the coldest place on earth, the forge that makes the strongest people, the land that asks everything and gives just enough, home. The year is 1628, and everything is about to change. For 4 centuries, the Yakut have ruled their frozen domain, dealing with neighbours as equal trading, fighting, marrying, absorbing. But now strangers approach from the west. Men with pale skin and strange weapons, wearing crosses instead of amulets, speaking of a distant Tsar who claims ownership of lands he's never seen. Toyin Taijin Darkan knows they're coming before they arrive. The greatest leader the Yakut have produced, he commands respect from the Lena to the Aldan rivers. At 60 winters old, he's survived everything the cold can inflict and emerged stronger. His warriors number in the hundreds, his cattle in the thousands. When he speaks, clans listen. When he rides, enemies flee. But these new enemies don't flee. They advance. The first reports come from western settlements. Strange men in small groups, carrying thundersticks that kill from distance. They demand Yasakfur tributine, the name of someone called the Tsar. Some clans laugh and send them away. Those clans burn days later, their warriors dead from invisible wounds, their women and children scattered. Tigin calls a Kurultaya gathering of all major Toyans. They meet at the traditional grounds near present-day Yakutsk, travelling through early winter storms to answer his summons. The assembly is unprecedented in size. Leaders who normally scheme against each other sit together, united by common threat. The debates rage for days. Some advocate immediate war strike before these Russians establish themselves. Others counsel diplomacy. Perhaps these strangers can be absorbed like the Evenks were. A few suggest retreat deeper into the cold, where no outsider could follow. Tijin listens to all, his scarred face revealing nothing. He's fought the Tungus, the Evenks, even probing Mongol raiders. But these Russians represent something different. Their leaders don't lead from the front like proper warriors. They build fortified houses and wait. They have endless supplies of powder for their thunder weapons. Most disturbing, they keep coming. Kill one group and another appears, like ice forming on water inevitable, relentless. Young Mancheri, Taigin's eldest surviving son, advocates for total war. At 35 winters, he's in his prime year warrior who's never lost in single combat, commander of 200 mounted archers. He demonstrates the superiority of Yakut military technology. Composite bows that outrange muskets, armour of overlapping iron plates that deflects arrows, horses trained to charge through anything. We are many, they are few, he argues. Strike now before they multiply like mosquitoes in summer. But old Kotoroi, a Toyan from the northern clans, offers different wisdom. He's encountered Russians before, trading with them for iron and powder. He speaks their language poorly but adequately. More importantly, he understands their nature. They're not like us, he explains. Behind these few stand thousands. Behind thousands stand tens of thousands. They have a homeland, vast as winter, forges that never cool, armies that march in any weather. Fight them and win, more come. Fight them and lose. We cease to exist. The argument that sways Taijin comes from an unexpected source. Mosokol the shaman, ancient beyond counting, speaks of visions. In the spirit world, he's seen rivers of pale men flowing east, endless as the Lena in spring flood. But he's also seen the Yakut surviving, adapting, emerging stronger. The spirits show two paths, he wheezes. On one, we fight and die gloriously, our names remembered, but our children enslaved. On the other, we bend without breaking, submit without surrendering, survive to rise again. The choice is ours, but the spirits counsel patience. Taigin makes his decision. He'll meet these Russians, measure them, test their intentions. If accommodation is possible, he'll explore it. If not, the Yakut will sell their lives dearly. But first, intelligence. The Russian expedition, led by Ataman Dmitry Kopylov, arrives at the Lena in September 1628. They're a ragged bunch 30 Cossacks who've travelled thousands of miles through hostile territory, surviving on stubbornness and superior firepower. They expect to find scattered primitives easy to subjugate. Instead, they find Tigin. The first meeting occurs on neutral ground, a meadow between the Russian stockade and Tigin's camp. Both sides bring warriors, the Russians with muskets and steel, the Yakut with bows and iron. The contrast is stark. The Cossacks are worn, dirty, desperate beneath their bravado. The Yakut are clean, well-fed, confident in their homeland. Through interpreters, Evenks who speak both languages, poorly negotiations begin. Kopylov demands yasak, recognition of the Tsar's authority, and hostages to ensure compliance. In return, he offers protection from enemies and trading privileges. His translator struggles with concepts that don't exist in Yakut: empire, sovereign, divine right. Taijin listens patiently, his face a mask. When his turn comes, he speaks simply. The Yakut will trade with anyone who comes in peace. They'll share their land with those who respect it. But they bow to no distant ruler, pay tribute to no one who hasn't earned it through strength or wisdom. Your Tsar is far away, he says. Winter is close. Which do you think matters more here? The negotiations stall. Neither side will budge on core demands. The Russians can't return empty-handed. Failure means death or disgrace. The Yakut won't submit to abstract authority. Their whole culture is built on practical leadership. For weeks, the standoff continues. The Russians, secure in their stockade, wait for reinforcements that may or may not come. The Yakuts surround them, not quite besieging, but making clear that leaving requires permission. It's psychological warfare, Yakutian style. Let the strangers experience their first real winter. Let the cold argue more eloquently than words. As temperatures plummet, Russian confidence does too. Their European clothing, adequate for Moscow winters, fails against Yakutian cold. Frostbite claims fingers and toes. Their food supplies, calculated for normal consumption, vanish as bodies burn calories just to survive. The muskets, their main advantage, become unreliable in extreme cold powder. Doesn't ignite properly. Metal parts stick together. Meanwhile, the Yakut demonstrate their mastery. Warriors ride past the stockade in weather that keeps Russians huddled by fires. Yakut children play in temperatures that would kill Cossacks in hours. The message is clear. This is our world. You're just visiting. But Taijin isn't naive. He knows more Russians will come, better equipped, better prepared. He also knows the Yakut can't remain united. Forever-old rivalries will resurface once immediate danger passes. He needs a strategy that preserves his people while acknowledging new realities. The breakthrough comes from unexpected tragedy. Kopilov's translator, a Tungus man named Ichel, falls through river ice while checking fish traps. Yakut warriors rescue him, but he's dying from cold. In his delirium, he reveals Russian plans more expeditions coming, fortresses planned along all major rivers, systematic conquest of all Siberian peoples. Taigin uses this intelligence to craft a proposal. The Yakut will acknowledge the Zara formality that costs nothing since the Tsar is impossibly distant. They'll pay yasak, but at rates they determine based on hunting success. In return, they want written guarantees of self-governance, protection of traditional lands, and exclusive trading rights in their territory. It's a masterful compromise. The Russians get what they need to claim successful submission and promise of tribute. The Yakut keep what matters: actual control of their lives and lands. Both sides can claim victory, but implementation proves harder than agreement. Some Yakut clans refuse any accommodation with invaders. Young warriors, like Mancheri, view compromise as betrayal. The first yasak collection ends in bloodshed when Russian collectors demand more furs than agreed. Yakut arrows answer Russian muskets, and bodies freeze where they fall. Tigin holds his coalition together through force of personality and strategic concessions. Clans that cooperate receive Russian trade, good siren, powder, even firearms. Those who resist face punishment from both sides. It's brutal pragmatism, choosing survival over honour. The winter of 1629 tests everyone. Russians die from cold, scurvy and despair. Yakut die from new diseases the strangers brought. Both sides lose enough people to make hatred personal. Spring brings reinforcements for the Russians, but also growing Yakut resistance. The crisis comes when Taigin is invited to the Russian fortress for negotiations. His sons beg him not to goats, obviously a trap. But Taigin, 70 winters old and feeling mortality's approach, decides on one last gamble. He'll enter the beast's den and either secure his people's future or die trying. He enters with minimal guard, wearing his finest clothes knot for vanity. But to show Russian poverty hasn't touched Yakut wealth, the negotiations last days. Russian demands escalate more furs, permanent hostages, conversion to Christianity. Taygin deflects, delays, makes counteroffers that sound reasonable but change nothing. Then Russian patience ends. They arrest Taygin, declaring him hostage until Yasak payments increase. It's the spark that lights 4 decades of resistance. Marjorie leads the first assault on the fortress, nearly overwhelming surprise defenders. Only Taygin's command from captivity stops the slaughter he orders his people to withdraw, to wait, to survive. Taygin dies in Russian captivity in 1634, officially from age, but probably from despair. His death triggers the real war. Marjorie and his brothers lead uprising after uprising. The siege of 1642 sees thousands of Yakut warriors assault Yakutsk fortress. They nearly succeed, breaching walls and burning buildings before Russian firearms drive them back. The reprisals are horrific. Entire clans are slaughtered or scattered. The Yakut population drops by 70% through war, disease, and flight. Traditional leadership structures collapse. The proud, independent people who mastered the coldest place on earth become subjects of distant empire. But they survive. Because that's what the Yakut do. They adapt to Russians, like they adapted to cold, not by surrendering essential identity, but by finding ways to persist within new constraints. They learn Russian tactics, acquire Russian weapons, exploit Russian need for furs. Within generations, they're not conquered people, but essential partners in Siberian development. The cost is enormous. Traditional ways erode under orthodox conversion efforts. Russian becomes the language of power, pushing Yakut toward margins. Diseases continue ravaging populations with no immunity. The fur tribute system creates economic dependence that lasts centuries. Yet something essential endures. In remote settlements, far from Russian control, old ways persist. The language survives, enriched by Russian loanwords, but fundamentally unchanged. The skills that allowed survival in impossible cold transfer to surviving impossible politics. The Yakut become what they always were: adapters, survivors, people who make the impossible possible. Standing in 1690, a Yakut elder might mourn what was lost. The freedom to ride where wind takes you. The pride of owing allegiance to none but clan and conscience. The simplicity of enemies you could see and fight directly. All sacrificed to the reality of a changing world. But he might also feel pride. His people still exist when so many others vanished. His grandchildren speak Yakut, even if they also know Russian. His cattle still graze the oases, even if some milk goes to Russian governors. The cold still rules, even if the Tsar claims to. The Russians came to conquer the coldest place on earth. They found it already had masters. And while political control changed hands, mastery of survival didn't. In the end, the cold conquered the conquerors, turning Russians into apprentices to Yakut knowledge. The wheel of history turns, but in Yakutia, it turns slowly, grinding against permafrost and human stubbornness. The Russians are here to stay. So are the Yakut. Together, they'll write the next chapter of impossible survival in impossible cold. The coldest place on earth has new rulers but the same masters, and winter, eternal and impartial, judges them all.